Okay, so the ingredients for a base turkey gravy are extremely easy. You can use this for a turkey gravy, chicken gravy, pork gravy, doesn't matter. But you are going to need some type of fat. My fat is going to be butter. I'm going to use 4 tablespoons of butter. And then you are going to need some all-purpose flour. The butter and flour make your roux. And I'm using 4 tablespoons of butter, which is 1/4 of a cup. So I'm using 1/4 of a cup of the flour. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. That's the main part you need to get here. Now, to make my gravy, I am using my homemade turkey stock. I'm going to link this video in the cards and also in the description bar. For the best gravy, a stock like this is definitely a necessity. You can use store-bought stock, but you can't beat this. Now, I'm going to pick this up. You can just use black pepper, a little salt, little onion powder to season your gravy, because you don't want your gravy to be flavorless. If you're using a stock like this, it won't be. But these help to kind of give it that fully round taste. But if you know me and you've been on this channel for a while, you know that I'm going to use some Slap Your Mama. So this is not a requirement, but it will amp up the flavor of your gravy. So I'm not going to overtalk this. This is going to be fairly a short recipe. If you want the recipe for giblet gravy, just stay tuned. It's coming later today. We're going to head over to the stove and we're going to go ahead and get this show on the road. So for this, you are going to need a whisk. I have my heat on a medium heat. It's going to go ahead and start heating up this pan before I put the butter in. For those of you who don't like the sound of metal on metal, I'm sorry. I don't have a silicone whisk yet, but I'm going to put it on the list so I can go ahead and order one. So now, I have my 4 tablespoons of butter here. Go ahead and drop that in, and I'm going to let it start to melt. Now, when you're making gravy, this is not something that you can walk away from. You're going to have to stick with it. You're going to have to stay with it. So we're going to let this butter melt, and then we're going to be right back. Okay? So our butter is nice and melted. So now I'm going to take that 1/4 of a cup of flour, and I'm going to dump it in. And now, you just need to keep it moving. You gotta keep it moving. Now, we're trying to cook out the taste of the flour, and what we're making here is called a roux. If you watch my mac and cheese video, this is how I make it. This is how I usually make any kind of gravy. Sometimes I'll use oil. Like if I had smothered some chicken, I have a smothered chicken recipe coming up, and you're gonna see me use oil. But all you need when you're making gravy is a fat and some flour. Fat and flour, that's it. So the longer you cook this, the richer the taste, the darker your gravy. So if you have a blonde colored roux, so like a light roux like this, then your gravy is going to be light. So if you want a nice, rich, dark gravy, then you're going to have to cook this roux longer. It's very similar to when you're cooking gumbo. How you have to just keep cooking your oil and flour until it gets dark, or otherwise you're going to have a light skin gumbo. That's what this is. So I'm going to cook this for probably around 7 minutes. I'll give you the exact cooking time once I'm done, and then we'll move on to our next steps. But if you see, I am never going to stop moving, and this is still on a medium heat. Do not try to do this on a high heat. You will burn it. You will burn it. You will burn it. So don't do it on a high heat. Alright, so this has been on around 4 minutes, and I dropped the heat to a medium low, but as you see, it's starting to get this nice dark rich color, and that's what I want. I wanted a nice brown turkey gravy. So now at this point, since we have that brown color I'm looking for, we are going to introduce our stock. And again, the recipe for this stock will be down below. But the base of a good gravy is stock. Great stock makes great gravy. And again, this is a base gravy recipe. So we're going to turn it back up to a medium heat. And as it starts to boil, it's going to thicken up. I'm going to go ahead and introduce the rest of my stock. So this is a quart container. So that was 32 ounces of stock that I used. Alright, so now we are going to bring this to a boil. Alright, so once you bring it to a boil, now it's time to start seasoning it up. And this, I can't give you exact measurements. I'm on a medium heat at this point, but I can't give you exact measurements because you're going to season to taste. So it just depends on what taste, you know, you and your family are going for. So I'm going in with my Slap Your Mama first because y'all know that is my seasoning of choice. Mix that in. Alright, now I'm gonna go in with a little black pepper, a little onion powder, and if you just want to use black pepper, onion powder, and salt, you can season your gravy however you want. The main thing is you don't want bland gravy. So you definitely want to make sure that you taste it. And the more you let it boil, the thicker it's going to get. If you want a super thick gravy, then you can make a slurry, and that's just taking some flour and some cold water, and you're gonna stir it together and make a little liquid, and then you add it to it, and then it'll thicken up. But this, it will thicken as it cools and as it boils down. So you can do that however you want to do it. All right, so we're going to give, and you know what, I may go ahead and show you a slurry, because when you make gravy, you want it to coat the back of that spoon, and you see how it's not quite coating the spoon. So I'm gonna go ahead and make a slurry and show you how to do it, but I'm gonna taste for flavor right now. Okay, so we need more salt, and the reason why you see me using a good bit of salt is because I wanted my stock to remain a low sodium stock. So I did not put a lot of salt in my stock. I chose instead to flavor the gravies and the dressing. So if you make a salty stock to begin with, then you're gonna have a hard time trying to control the amount of salt in your final products that you're using it for. So I just decided to make mine a very low sodium stock. And so that's why it looks like I'm using a good bit of salt. Alright, so we're gonna taste this again. We're almost there. And that's why as you cook, you cannot be afraid to taste your food. If you don't taste your food, then you don't know what product you're putting out. And then, you know, it's just not good. So make sure you taste your food. If you like it, other people will like it. Alright, so we're about to tighten this up with a slurry. So we're going to go back to the counter and make that slurry. Alright, so here I'm going to use a tablespoon of flour. And then I'm gonna run cold water in here, and it has to be cold water. It cannot be hot water. So I ran the cold water in and created this. And so you're gonna give it a good stir. You wanna make sure you kinda get all of those clumps out of there. Otherwise, it may clump up your gravy. And you can use this to thicken anything. You could have used cornstarch. I just don't use cornstarch that often. I typically use all-purpose flour for things. So I'm using the flour. So you want to make sure that it's really, really smooth. And now let's go back over to our gravy. All right. So I turned the heat down a little bit to medium-low heat. And as you can see, it's already starting to thicken up. But we're going to take our slurry. Add it in. And give it a stir. And watch the magic happen. And you can do that slurry as many times as you need to. But like I said, keep in mind, this is boiling hot at this point, and you don't want to make it like a glue paste, because as it cools down, it is going to thicken. So keep that in mind. And if you make it too thick right now, it's going to be stuck to the container when you get ready to serve it to your guests. So you still want it to have some liquid consistency so that as it cools off, it doesn't seize up. Alright, now you see it starting to coat that spoon a little more. That slurry helped to thicken it up. So this is the recipe, the basics of how to make a basic gravy. You don't need to use those packs. It's not necessary at all. You can do this. So the next video that I'm about to put out is going to be a giblet gravy. And that is going to be one specifically for Thanksgiving, using the giblets of your turkey or your chicken. So this one is a turkey gravy, but it's like for mashed potatoes or something. I'm going to make one that goes with your dressing. So stay tuned for that. As always, make sure that you like this video. That just lets YouTube know that you like the content that I'm putting out, and it helps my channel more than you know. If you have any questions or comments or, anything, make sure you leave me a comment below. I love hearing from you all. Share this video with your friends. It's a super simple recipe for how to make gravy, brown gravy. So until next time, I love you guys, and bye, neighbors.